Hey, what do you say, Seattle Kraken fans? It's a game day, and we are going to talk about game number 2 on the road. Whew. Some things went down in Vegas, and I'm going to talk about it, but with a friend. We have a SQUADCAST episode featuring Ann Kimmel of the Lockedon Nashville Predators coming up on today's Thursday game day episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Ann Kimmel, one of your hosts of the Locked On Predators show.
All right. So I am joined now by our great friend, Erica Ayala. She is the host of Locked On Kraken. Erica, you know there is nothing that delights me more than hanging out with you and talking hockey and all the other things that we cover when we get together.
It's so good to be back, and I love when we have an opportunity to SQUADcast.
I know I like to call it Squidcast with you, but we'll stick with SQUADcast. Yeah,
Squidcast, SQUADcast. We're all good.
We're all good. So just going to jump right in and get some information from you on the Seattle Kraken. I want to go back a ways. Let's look back a little bit in time. Tell me, were you surprised at all by what the Kraken were able to do in the postseason? And what were the keys to that success that they had? I think they caught a lot of people off guard. Did they catch you off guard?
So if you're asking if they caught me off guard in the postseason, I would say no. But I would say that they definitely surprised me, pleasantly surprised me by being a 100-point team, by having the success that they did in the regular season to get to the postseason. And in particular, bless his heart, Martin Jones was so great and clutch for us. It wasn't always the smoothest ride, but you know what? A win is a win. And Martin Jones was a part of all of those. I know that he, last I checked, he was on the waiver wire and was waived by Toronto. So sad. But so that surprised me more. I had the Seattle Kraken finishing like 5th in the or like at their best, finishing 5th in the Pacific Division, and we finished 4th overall, got a wild card spot. So not so much surprised in the postseason. And if anything, there were some things that I think we did in the regular season that it's the postseason. People are tired. The stakes are raised. And I think that if they had just hit the gas a little bit more, that maybe they could have gotten over the hump in round 2. But no, I wouldn't say I was surprised in the postseason, but definitely in the regular season.
Yeah. So you mentioned Martin Jones. There are some changes that have happened to this roster over the offseason. Walk us through what are some of the biggest changes with the Seattle Kraken roster, and how do you see that kind of playing out into 2023-24?
I think another thing that was a big storyline for the Seattle Kraken last year was that our quote unquote 4th line was actually our most steady and productive line for a decent amount of that first half of the season. And so when we're talking about changes, we, much to my disappointment, didn't really activate as much as I would have liked to in the last 2 free agency periods. Ron Francis, our general manager, definitely is taking a more conservative approach. So we didn't see big splashes there. But what we did see is some exits, some pretty key exits that I think with just one game in, I think we're going to have to figure out how the chips fall. But effectively, our 4th line, Ryan Donato, Morgan Geekie, and Daniel Sprong no longer with the team. And if you are a listener of Locked On Kraken, hey, Locked On Kraken listeners, then you know that I did some quick math. This is before all the boy math, girl math thing was a thing. So we started the trend. I don't know. But we did some quick math on Locked On Kraken and calculated the goals and overall points that those three offered, and then the points that players like Kyler Yamamoto, Brian Dumoulin, and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare were bringing in, and we are negative points just going off last season. And so that was a concern for me. That being said, we're also plus a healthy Andre Burakovsky. We're plus an entire season with Eli Tolvanen. So will it balance out? We don't know yet, but those are just some of the things that, looking as we were heading into preseason, that were some things that I was focused on. And we mentioned Martin Jones. Another thing, and we were talking a little bit off air about this, is that I've been saying at Locked On Kraken that the goaltending competition not only was likely going to be very high, but absolutely needed to be. We really needed to push to see who were going to be our two netminders. Philip Grubauer was great for us in the playoffs.
Huge.
And massive. And we saw Martin Jones peter out a little about after his early work. And then we saw Joey Daccord, and we talked about this on another SQUADCAST when we were talking about AHL hockey. Joey Daccord was amazing for the Firebirds. And here we are, one season in, and it's Philip Grubauer and Joey Daccord, and Chris Driedger, coming off his ACL injury and surgery, was put on waivers and now is with the Coachella Valley Firebirds.
Yeah. So how do you see, talking about Grubauer and talking about, not Donato, I'm sorry to bring that up, Daccord. I'm sorry. Donato. I know. Joey Daccord, how do you see them splitting time? Is it like a 1A, 1B? Do you have a clear starting goaltender? How is that all going to pan out for the Kraken?
It's a great question. I think coming into the season, the presumption is that, especially after his performance in the postseason, that this is Philip Grubauer's net, and that Joey Daccord brings an exciting, younger, kind of fun game alongside that. I don't think that we're going to necessarily see an equitable split, or I should say that's what I thought before our first game of the season. And I can probably get into why I have maybe some reservations, but my gut is we're only one game in, so we're talking super early returns, super small, as in almost a zero sample size. But I do think we'll see Philip Grubauer in net the most, and then Joey Daccord here sparingly, particularly that we don't have too many back-to-backs or kind of short turnarounds, but in situations like that where the teams may be on the road for an extended stretch, I think we'll see that's probably when Joey Dax will get his time. And
you would do it differently? Go ahead and put it out there. You seem like maybe you have a different idea.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit touch and go for me. Right now, where I'm at with the Seattle Kraken in goaltending and really everything else is, and I've been saying this on the show, we have to have a tight leash. And I do think that Ron Francis is on board with that, more so than we've seen in years past. But this is a team that made it to the second round of the playoffs. That was one win away from the Western Conference Finals. And no one thought we would be there. So there's a lot of pressure. And I believe it was Vince Dunn that said there's even kind of internalized pressure from the team to really want to move forward. The team is not thinking like, look at us, we made it to the second round in year 2. They're like, we lost in game 7.
That's
very different, very different. And so there's really this drive to want to push. And so with that said, again, the competition, I think, is a good and healthy thing. That being said, I want open communication always, but I do think that the issues that Philip Grubauer has had, putting aside his injuries, which is why we didn't see him as much last year, were not really all Philip, but definitely a part of the Seattle Kraken not buying in completely on defense. And again, early returns, we only have one game, but if I'm being honest, I started to see a little bit of that Seattle Kraken, as opposed to an all-in by committee with great forechecking, which was really our bread and butter last year. And the reason I feel that that impacts goaltending is because that puts a lot of pressure on goaltenders. We saw against the Vegas Golden Knights in our first game, their home opener and banner-raising celebration coming straight out the massive slap machine on the ice. But we saw that Philip Grubauer early in that game had breakaway opportunities that he had to stave off and did not always do so. I don't think that's fair to a goaltender, and that has to come from more discipline from the skaters. And so that's why I do think that a more equitable split, if we see that version of the Seattle Kraken, would benefit the team overall, but especially kind of how Philip Grubauer and his overall demeanor is. I think he needs a little bit of a break from that sometimes. And if I'm being honest, I think he has earned and deserved a little bit of a break, a reprieve. Like, oh, they don't have their things together. No, thank you. I will sit here and open the door.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, something to be said about that for the goaltender getting what he deserves. I have to bring up a player. You mentioned him in passing. You know, it is the Voldemort of the Nashville Predators, Eeli Tolvanen. Predators fans absolutely love this young kid, of course, placed on waivers. It was a huge to-do. It will always be a huge hitch in the giddy up here in Nashville. Saw him really kind of flourish with the Seattle Kraken. What do you expect to see from him this season? How do you think Dave Haxtell views him, and how might he use him this season? Break it to us gently.
Well, if you are truly Eeli Tolvanen fans and on board with him being happy and just playing with joy, then I think you would have been very excited to see him at preseason. He was jovial, he was having fun, but also shooting the lights out of the puck. Like, he looked in great form. I said this to our SUBTEXT group last night watching the game. His line with Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, it looked the most, game ready to me last night and throughout preseason. I think Eeli Tolvanen, and like you said, I alluded to this, and it's actually something Ron Francis said. He's like, Ron said to media, I'd be lying if I felt we were exactly where we needed to be, which I was like, yes, Ron, please tell the truth. Because I feel this way too. So justification, I know what I'm talking about on Locked On Kraken. But then he mentioned explicitly that one of the things that the Seattle Kraken did not benefit from last year was having Eeli Tolvanen for the whole season. So there's because there are some new players that we're bringing into the mix, not on his line, but it's a little bit less of a culture shock, of a transition. There's a little bit of job security. He's playing with players that he ended the season playing with. And he just looked light. He looked fun, like he was having fun. He was having a good time. And so I do think that there are some expectations for what effectively has been lining up as our third line. And similar to what I was saying about our third kind of fourth line, but the Sprong, Geeky, and Ryan Donato line, and they kind of jumped around depending on what was happening. I think that we're going to see some pretty heavy productivity from that third line. And I think that opens things up for Eberle, Beniers, and McCann. And so I think that, Yanni Gourde's such a grinder. Eeli Tolvanen, just a freaking wicked shot. And Bjorkstrand, such great ice vision. He knows how to set up plays very well. And so I really do think that Tolvanen will thrive, and that line will thrive.
Okay. You really did give it to us straight, Erica. And look, I think so much of hockey and life is being in the right place at the right time. And it just sounds like Eeli Tolvanen has found his right place and his right time. Hopefully it will not cost the Nashville Predators tonight, but bless him in all his other 80 endeavors as he goes forward. Fair. So coming up, Erica is going to turn the table. She's got some questions about a very different looking Nashville Predators roster. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just one moment.
But of course, first we want to tell you about FanDuel. Now, we know that the NHL season is upon us, NFL season and the NBA coming up. And FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and for good reason, because right now new customers will get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed bonus bets when you place a $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets win or lose when you make a bet of at least $5. Now we're talking, you can do spreads, player props, over-unders. I have loved keeping tabs on the over-unders as I'm covering the WNBA finals. And of course, you can also do future bets, which over on Locked On Kraken in particular, in the lead up to the Calder Award, which of course went to Maddie Beniers, we were definitely watching those future bets on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on to kick off the season. FanDuel is an official partner of the National Football League.
All right, Erica, we are going to jump in and talk some Nashville Predators. A lot is very different. We are not just Ellie Tolvanen-less this season. There's all kinds of other stuff going on. So if you have questions, we've got one game under our belt. We've got maybe some answers. Let's see.
All right. Well, similarly, because the last time we had our Squidcast, we were again talking about the American Hockey League, and we were talking about some of the young guns. I love the name Evangelista, just like love that. Such a good name. But we were talking about how the Nashville Predators were kind of in a position where, from the outside looking in, it was like, how are we going to maneuver some of maybe these more seasoned players, maybe make some space for the young guns? And then, of course, there were some moves. We did not have many in the offseason, but the Predators did. So what's the state of the franchise? I know you've already had one game, but like, what was the state of the franchise coming into this season with finding that good balance of young blood, but also enough experience to really be competitive?
Yeah, it was a really hot kind of topic here among the Nashville Predators fan base, because at the end of last season, it really was going to be this youth movement. We were going to focus on these young players like Cody Glass, like Luke Evangelista, Juuso Parssinen, Tommy Novak. We had these young players that we haven't seen as much in the NHL. And then new general manager Barry Trotz went out and signed these veterans, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Schenn, and Gustav Nyquist. And so it kind of left this question of, are you really making space to develop these young players that you've been talking about? And so it's been a very interesting training camp of watching how that balance and how that mix is coming together, because what we're seeing is the veterans come in and they're taking a leadership role, like Ryan O'Reilly named an alternate captain. We have Ryan McDonough, another alternate captain. So we've got this veteran presence in the locker room and on the ice, but they've also opened up spots for these younger players. So Juuso Parssinen he was a seventh round draft pick, y'all, in 2019. He is playing right now on the top line with Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg. So they're kind of mixing these guys in. They're finding places even on the power play. Tommy Novak is on the first power play unit. So there is opportunity for these young players to get some experience and to grow, but they're definitely letting them do that in a controlled environment with a lot of veteran presence as well. So it's a little bit of a balance. It's not as 100% youth movement as we thought it would be, but it seems to be working pretty well through training camp and one game in that we lost. So it's not about wins or losses as I measure this.
I love that. And I appreciate you offering that, because again, it was something that we talked about. But as you were speaking, I was reminded that another thing that we talked about, and I think this was when we had the trio. So I think Nick was with us, but there was something that y'all were saying, and it was like, mark our words, if there is movement at the GM and or coaching level, it likely had a lot to do with Ellie Tolvanen walking out the door and going to Seattle for free. So since Ellie Tolvanen is of mutual interest, how did, if at all, do you think that the Tolvanen maybe mismanagement played a role into who are some of the new leadership roles, new to the Predators, I should say?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you know what? It's so funny. Looking back, I think that the Ellie Tolvanen situation was a little bit that, when you line up the dominoes, it was the first domino that started a chain reaction. And that was the Ellie Tolvanen move. You place him on waivers and say, well, we thought he would get through. Are you nuts? Now, granted, he made it a little ways before y'all got there, but this is a player with a ton of potential. And I think the feeling was, why couldn't you make this fit? And again, a lot of it is right place, right time, but the situation was not an ideal situation. How much of that is on Ellie Tolvanen and how much of that was on the coaching staff, I'm not sure. So much here in Nashville has changed, and I really feel like the Ellie Tolvanen move was one of those dominoes that kind of moved things in a different direction. The style of play that the Nashville Predators are learning and trying to execute under Andrew Brunette is Ellie Tolvanen style of play. It is fast. It is north-south. It is quick transition. It is shoot the dang puck. And so it's a tough pill to swallow. He didn't jive. It didn't jive. I want to be careful not to say that Ellie Tolvanen didn't jive. It didn't jive the way that it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the way things are now, I think that there is a lot of regret, because I think now under Andrew Brunette and with these younger players and with a completely new system, this would have been a place where Ellie Tolvanen could have thrived in his style of play. But, God go with him every day but tonight.
Yeah. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, as they say on Sex and the City. I think that's really interesting because we mentioned him, and I want only good things for Ryan Donato. I mean, honestly, even when he's playing against Seattle, I don't care. But but I mean, he's, I don't know, just on the line with Connor Bedard. You're doing amazing, sweetie. You're doing amazing.
Oh my gosh, not bad.
Has the first goal for the Chicago Blackhawks. Like, you're doing amazing. 4 unanswered goals started by Ryan Donato, assisted by Bedard and Vlasic. You're doing amazing, sweetie. So, I mean, I feel that. And again, it's Donato. Geeky, I was never super sold on Geeky, but I understand statistically his role for the Kraken. Mm-hmm. Just with Boston. And then Daniel Sprong, he got a nice little package for himself in Detroit. But what the difference is, especially with Sprong, definitely didn't agree with Donato, because he has that, as he once said, that piss and vinegar. He scored a goal the other night by being just peppering, being in the crease, like just being like a menace, a nuisance. Yeah. And I sometimes feel like that physical game, not just like throwing elbows and dumping people's faces into the glass for no reason. He had that. And I don't know that the Seattle Kraken really have that without him. If anything, we needed more. So I completely understand that. We have not made any changes at the top. In fact, we've extended Ronnie Francis and Dave Haxtell, which I do think was the right choice. And I feel like I've mentioned it a few times that our conservative kind of way of maneuvering has been how we've built up to season 3. But now it's kind of like, are we gonna do this or not? So I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. Okay, I might be a little biased because, as I've already said, goaltending, I'm like always anxious about goaltending, really, because I feel like it's an extension of how well or lack thereof our defense is arranged. But what's the goaltending vibe and situation? Because I feel like the Predators have been on a ride in the last year or so.
Yeah. There are very few things I can say for certain about the Nashville Predators, because it's just everything is different. New general manager, new head coach, new system, new roster. The one stable thing the Nashville Predators have is UC Saros in net. And UC Saros is such a difference maker, not just right now, but for the direction of the team, because Barry Trotz is very clear. This is a reset. It is not a rebuild. Linguistics matter to them, but I think having UC Saros in net really does change the time frame of how soon can this Nashville Predators team get back into playoff contention, because UC Saros can keep teams in games. We saw it in the first game. I mean, Tampa Bay had 12 goals or 12 shots on net in the first period. Nashville had 2. who made that a 1-0 game going in intermission? It's UC Saros. So I think he buys some time for this team to learn a new system, to embrace a new system, for these young players to develop. UC Saros is a workhorse. He actually does better with more work. We have a fantastic backup in Kevin Lankinen. It's almost a shame because I'm like, give Lanky some time. Like, he is so good. Give him some time. He has earned it. But I think in Nashville, we are going to see, 60, 65 games of UC Saros and just a smidge of Kevin Lankinen. And then do we have the coolest prospect goaltender, Yaroslav Askarov? You probably saw him with the Coachella Valley. Well, he only played a little bit against Coachella Valley with the Milwaukee Admirals, but we've got him cooking in the AHL. He is a lot of fun. He is stress inducing. I take a lot of Tums when I watch him, but goaltending is the one area where Nashville is walking confident.
I love that for y'all. I really do. And one day Seattle will be there as well.
I know. It was good. When everything else is chaos, we've got UC Saros.
And here's the thing, because I do feel that Philip Grubauer sometimes gets unwarranted kind of negative vibes and attention. Again, I do think it comes more from I wouldn't call Philip Grubauer a workhorse, not from what I've seen, at least. I know that he's had a career, obviously, before the Seattle Kraken, but to me, he's not going to bail out mistakes. And that means, and I don't think it's a bad thing, like, everyone should, how many millions of dollars are y'all getting paid? Or I guess hundreds of thousands for some, but how much are y'all getting paid? You need to do your job. And I feel like Philip Grubauer would never say this publicly, but he gives off that vibe of like, I did my job, I'm gonna need other people to do their job. And I'm not, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. And so I think we are going to see him in net. So I'm very curious. It sounds like we're probably going to see UC Saros.
It'll be Saros.
It will be Saros. I mean, we're only 2 games. Let's not shake it up right away.
No. It'll be Saros. It's a first home game against the Seattle Kraken and Ellie Tolvanen in Bridgestone Arena. It will be UC Saros, short of him being kidnapped.
Oh, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Well, when we come back, I would love to hear a little bit about what you're thinking, because I know it has gone down in history that the Seattle Kraken, on their first ever endeavor, got their first win in Nashville. So are we going to get a repeat of that? I don't know, but let's talk about it. But first, we have a little partner of the Locked On Network that we want to talk about.
We do. This episode is brought to you by our great friends with the Sleeper app. The NHL season is finally here. Hallelujah. And Nashville Predators fans are wondering what to expect from a very different looking team. If you are playing fantasy hockey and you want all the inside information on Tommy Novak, or heaven help us, Ellie Tolvanen, you need to check out the Sleeper app. The Sleeper app is the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, and it's my go-to for fantasy sports, especially when it comes to fantasy hockey. If you like to talk hockey, you can join with other Predators or Krakens fans to talk about what the team is doing, get some opinions on your fantasy team. They have team chat on Sleeper, and with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on stats for your favorite Preds player, on any stat, things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus. That's right. You can get 100 times the payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks in right away to win big. The app is so easy to use, and your entries can be made in under a minute. So download the Sleeper app and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you will get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That is the Sleeper app, promo code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details.
All right. Well, we are not going to want to sleep on this matchup here between the Seattle Kraken on the road and the Nashville Predators. Okay, kind of alluded to it, but we did spoil the party once in our inaugural season.
Yeah, you did.
But also, I mean, the Seattle Kraken have also dropped a game, and Nashville has already tripled our goal output in just the one game. We just had the one. It was just Jared McCann. So I played this little game where I have these fun little buttons that I got at preseason. Here's Philip Gruber, for those who may not know, is a German gentleman. Love that. So in a minute, I'm gonna pick. There's only a few players in here, but we're just having fun with it. I'm gonna let this little baggie decide who the player of the match is gonna be for Seattle. But before I do that, and who do you think will be the player of the match? And it can be who you think will be, or who you think needs to be the player to step it up, get the dub at home.
Yeah, I think those can be two different things. The player that I think it needs to be is Philip Forsberg. Barry Trotz really built this team saying that Philip Forsberg is the backbone of our offense. And he and Ryan O'Reilly, they are cooking some magic together. There is some chemistry there. They are playing with young Juuso Parssinen. Also a little bit of a fun line, but I would love to see Philip Forsberg really take the lead offensively for this team, and, a goal, maybe two, a hat trick. I don't know, but Philip Forsberg is who needs to just kind of take things over tonight at Bridgestone Arena for me. Now reach into your magic bag of goodies and tell me. I can't stand it. Don't let it be Ellie Tolvanen. Don't let it be Ellie Tolvanen.
I will tell you, Ellie's not in here right now. It's still early. Okay, so for game one, I pulled Matty Beniers, Matty B. Let's see who we get, which I always love talking about him. Okay, I have the button in my hand. Let's see who we've got. Oh my goodness, it's Matty Beniers again. That's so wild. I tell you, okay, Locked on Kraken fans know there's two of each Grubauer, McCann, and Beniers. So this means that this is the 2 of 2 of Matty Beniers. So there was a higher chance that I would pick someone else, and I still picked Matty B, which is just fine by me because I love this guy right here. We actually had a lot of shots on goal in our first game, and the first one, if I remember correctly, I mean, who knows how they do the stats, but I would have credited our first shot on goal to this guy right here. So much conversation about if he can match his output from his Rookie of the Year campaign last year, which I'm like, if you listen to the podcast, you know that Matty Beniers, he learns on the fly. He absorbs so much. He has such a high IQ that I never worry about him, and he's always impacting the game. So I love this. But just as I did in game one, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, my probably real answer is that it's going to be the Gord line, which of course includes Ellie Tolvanen. I think they are going to, especially early on in this season, the Seattle Kraken will go as that line goes. Ellie Tolvanen, Yanni Gord, and Oliver Bjorkstrand. And on SUBTEXT, I had an interview with Bjorkstrand, and he knows that he's kind of like a slow starter sometimes in the season, but that was kind of extended a little coming to a new team in the Seattle Kraken. So he's really excited and energized to make an impact earlier on. So those are my thoughts. The little sachet that I have here has picked Matty B, but also keep an eye on that third line for us.
I just have to tell you as an aside, Nick and I got to work the red carpet at the NHL Awards, and we got to talk to Matty Beniers. So freaking precious.
He's
so precious. What a just wonderful first impression from that young man. Now, I would like him to kind of keep his goal scoring in his pocket tonight, but Matty Beniers is he is totes adorbs.
So adorbs. And I feel like you do need to have that conversation with him about musical theater. I'm ready for it. I'm subscribing, I'm reading, I'm listening multiple times over. And I forgot we also have Andre Burakovsky in the bag, but we didn't pick Andre. We didn't get McCann or Philip this time around. We went with Matty B. So
not a bad pick. All right. So we have each of our teams have had one game under their belt, each of them a loss. What is the Seattle Kraken going to improve upon in this game tonight against the Nashville Predators? What's going to be their big improvement?
Well, I personally would like to say special teams, although Dave Haxtell might disagree. We kind of talked about that offline. He's been very defensive about the power play. The power play was 0 for 4 in our first game and wasn't really that great in preseason. The penalty kill, better. We were 4 for 4, so we did not give up anything, but we also had a 5-minute so we had 5 minutes on the power play in that first game, really hoping that Brandon Tanev is okay. Actually, we might see someone come up. Well, actually, what I think is going to happen is that we'll see Ty Cartier slide in, and then Tyler Yamamoto probably stay on that fourth line. But I really do think, despite what Dave Haxtell is saying early, that we need to focus. We need to be practicing, and I've been saying this for over a year. We need to be practicing special teams because those opportunities are too great and too big for a team like us that in 2 seasons has had way too many 1-goal losses or games where maybe we lost by 2 or 3 goals, and just like game 1 where we let in an empty netter. So I really do want us to refine special teams, and I don't know how much we're going to be able to do that from game 1 to game 2, but that to me is going to be a massive factor in this game, and I do think that the Seattle Kraken really have to ramp it up on the power play in particular.
Well, one of the things that I know the Nashville Predators need to do better is to stay out of the penalty box. I always say there are no snacks in the sin bin. They kept checking against the Tampa Bay Lightning just to make sure. So, I know you want to work on the power play, but I would really like for you to not get that opportunity. Let's keep out of the penalty box, Nashville. The other thing the Predators have to do that the Seattle Kraken do really well is the Predators have to come out and play right away. They kind of jittered their way into the first period against Tampa Bay. That is not something that the Seattle Kraken will allow. The Seattle Kraken hit that ice running and they don't stop until the final buzzer. So I know Nashville is going to have to really hit the ground running right from first puck drop against the Kraken. Y'all are scary.
Yeah. Well, hey, we certainly can be. We can also be scary in what we don't execute. So, we'll see. It is October, spooky season. So we'll see.
All right. So last question. Give me your final guess, final score. Who's going to win it? By how many goals? What do you have?
Okay. I'm thinking we're going to get a 4-2 scoreline here. And I think if Ty Cartier is in the lineup, that's going to be a 4-2 win for the Seattle Kraken. I was a little bit surprised that he wasn't in the lineup, but Dave Haxtell wanted more on special teams. So Kyler Yamamoto, who had a great preseason, was in. Yeah. But I think Ty Cartier just gives us something really electric, and that we need that offensively. So I'm going 4-2 in favor of the Seattle Kraken. If we don't see Cartier, I think it's up in the air and maybe 4-2 the other way.
Yeah. So funny that you say 4-2 because I actually was thinking 4-2 as well. Hopefully, I think the Nashville Predators, if they can bounce back, if they can do what they know they need to do right out of the gate, I also think it will make a difference that they're playing at Bridgestone Arena, which I know it didn't in that other time. We gave you that first win. You're welcome. Hospitality in the South and all that. But I do think first game in Bridgestone Arena for players like Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, Luke Shen, I think the environment is going to fuel that. I'm going to go Nashville Predators 4-2, but I think this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a real good game.
Yeah, I think so. And hopefully for both our sakes, because, I always want to see Nashville do well. I mean, you and Nick also, but I mean, we squadcast a lot, and there's just a little special place in my heart for Nashville. So I just want to see everyone compete really well. I mean, I know I'm sounding hella stereotypical, but honestly, a good game is what I want to see. It's super early in the season, but these are 2 teams where we do internally have a lot that we want to prove. There's been enough change where we can kind of exercise some of those demons from last season, but there's also enough stability and carryover where we can continue on with our respective cultures. And so I think that can make for a really fun game.
You can find Locked On Predators on, we call it Twitter X because I can't quite get there with the X. That's just how I feel. At LO_Predators. You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice. Erica, you know, it is always nothing short of a fat joy to get to hang out with you. And we will see what happens tonight. Kraken Predators tonight, Bridgestone Arena, 7 o'clock. We'll see everybody there, and we will see everybody back tomorrow on our respective podcasts to break down the game.
Thanks as always, everyone, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily routine. Also, thank you for your patience. I was on the road a lot longer than I intended to be, and I'm trying to catch up on sleep before I hit the road again. So, we will be back tomorrow with a Firebirds Friday. I'm super excited. They already have their home opener sold out. And I had a really great conversation with Jessica Campbell and Dan Bilesma. I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of those interviews. But if you are on SUBTEXT, you will get the whole thing. Just a reminder that you can join SUBTEXT by texting 918-731-3154. Again, that's 918-731-3154. We're going to do an AMA really soon. We have our game day threads. We have special interviews like the ones that I'm talking about with Jessica Campbell, Dan Bilesma. I still have an Edward Shala interview for you. Who else do we have? Alex Wenberg interview for you. So all that and more coming up on Locked On Kraken. But let's close out as we always do, reminding you to be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. And, pride runs deep, as the Seattle Kraken say. We're going to hold fast. We're going to stay true. And we are going to say loud and proud tonight, let's go Kraken. I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.